An active day for KELOLAND News yesterday, from prison talks to 988 ribbons on police cars for suicide prevention. This is Inside the Newsroom. We bring you the trending stories of the KELOLAND area, and then we bring in our Newsroom staff members to talk about the stories that you see every day on our newscasts and online at KELOLAND.com. To start off with today's trending story, South Dakota Department of Corrections Secretary Kelly Wasko will resign her position effective just next month. In fact, our digital reporter Ray Yost was the one who covered this yesterday, and she's here to talk more about this story that she created. Ray, to start off, I know this for context, at least for our viewers. This started as a part of team coverage when a lot of reporters got to interview our governor, Larry Roden, and you were a part of this conversation. Were you expecting the news of Wasko's resignation as you were interviewing Roden yesterday?
I don't know that it was necessarily expected, but one of the questions, it was a question in my mind, just wonder if something may happen, not specifically for yesterday, but because of some of the letter from about 20 House members saying there needed to be some changes in the DOC without specifically citing what those changes were that they wanted. One of my questions for the governor was going to be, can a prison package pass in the special session with Kelly Wasko as the DOC secretary? And, it was a little point. I didn't get to ask that because he, kind of offered the information, but it was part of what I was planning to ask him at some point. Not specifically, is she going to resign or did she resign, but what does this mean for her leadership going forward?
And so once you heard about those details, how did your assignment for the day kind of change, and how are you reconstructing your angle for your story?
Well, it changed because originally I was going to ask about that, and then also ask about, we're going to talk about a little bit later, Governor Roden's frequently asked question prison page. But it changed because you have another story to write now, and because it's website, you need to get that up as soon as possible. So, you're kind of letting the newsroom let the newsroom know below, when I say below, downstairs,
basics, yeah.
Letting them know, hey, this is coming up. We should get something as soon as we can. We have the letter. The governor gave us the letter, those kinds of things. So you want to go back and just get that information up on the website for a story as soon as you can.
Right. And, this kind of leads into my next story. Like, how do you personally like to tackle developing stories like this? Because we have the letter and we heard from Roden, and now you have to be at your desk updating your article. Is this something that you had to do periodically throughout the day, or is it just kind of a publish and go? How do you like to tackle developing stories?
Well, I think you're always looking at getting the important information at the time, or the newest news, so to speak, the breaking things out as soon as you can.
Yeah.
So that's the priority. And you're putting as much depth as you can into that, but you don't want to sit on it for an hour. You don't want to sit on it even for a half hour. You want to make sure you get it out there as quickly, accurate, always accurate as possible. As quickly as possible, always accurate. So then you want to go back and tweak some things, and you're going to maybe try to reach out to some lawmakers if possible. You're kind of seeing, other people are pitching in. We knew Bob Mercer had been interviewing Will Mortensen, a representative who was one of the letter signers about, the DOC needs to change. So you're going to go back periodically throughout the day and add things, whether that's information about, what was happening when she came to the DOC, some of the possible changes that she made in the DOC, maybe a little about what happened before then, and then any comments that you can gather or people have gathered throughout the day. So, Dan Santella, Bob Mercer both contributed to that with interviews, or at least getting some information that they had, because there was quite a few stories moving around the whole, I'm going to say, prison and the governor yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Lots of team coverage that we had yesterday. Yeah. And now today, there's still a lot of prison talks. Like, the buzz is still strong.
Yeah.
And you created a separate story actually yesterday about Roden's fact page about the prison. So how do you believe this article that you wrote will help our viewers?
Well, it was kind of funny because a little deja vu, because several months ago, I had done our own frequently asked questions story about the prison. So I was keenly interested in Rodin's page because he answered some new questions that have arisen. Obviously, one of them was, we were working with a roughly $825 million proposal. Now we're down to a cap of $650 million. So I perceive that the governor kind of looked at the questions that have been, officials have asked, lawmakers have asked. I would say interested parties, the public has asked, how do we get from here to there? And, how are we going to keep this cap? What's the commitment to keep this cap? So I think it's one thing that the readers can look at periodically. The story's going to be updated with when the governor does some updates within his fact page. So it's something we're going to be checking pretty regularly because, he's even promised to add more details as they are known.
And then you also included this section right here with the Nebraska versus South Dakota costs.
Yeah.
Can you explain this section a little bit? Why did you include this part?
Well, it's been a topic of frequent discussion.
Yes.
Frequent discussion. And, I've done several stories in the past related to what is the Nebraska project? How is it similar? How is it different? And the important part of including this is it continues to get asked because Nebraska is a roughly 1,500 bed project, but it's at a price that they got a bid for about $313 million. Well, there's some differences there, and the governor outlined those a little bit. The governor's page mentions the quality of materials or the type, and so it's just out there. There's always going to be questions about why do they get a facility or why is their plan less expensive? How is it the same? How is it different?
Great. Ray, thank you so much for sharing all these details right here at the Digital Desk. And viewers, stick around because up next on Inside the Newsroom, we still have some digital representation to give you from our reporters. Stay with us. And welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. A federal judge has struck down a new South Dakota law as unconstitutional. Looking into the details is our newest digital reporter, Marissa Brunkhorst, who found some interesting information. Marissa, what is this new law that has been ruled as unconstitutional?
Yeah, so the law was essentially allowing 9 months for petition circulators for either initiated measures or constitutional amendments to gather signatures prior to Election Day. That law was struck down by a judge last Friday.
Wow. And who was this judge, and why did the judge rule the law as unconstitutional?
Yeah, the judge was Carmela Thieler. She believed that the lawsuit essentially involved a group that is known to circulate petitions, Dakotans for Health, said that their First Amendment freedoms outweigh the state of South Dakota's interest in essentially what they were arguing as timeliness to resolve potential litigation prior to Election Day. So the state's argument essentially was that voters would be able to better understand what would be on the ballot if a potential lawsuit against a proposed measure was resolved.
Okay, so that was the support from lawmakers and then the governor as they passed the supporting of the 9-month petition deadline?
Yes, they argued that having more time allowed for these potential lawsuits to be resolved in a timely fashion, rather than the previous state law, which allows for 6 months of time prior to Election Day to submit signatures for ballot initiatives.
So what happens now that this law has been unconstitutional? Do we see any changes?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The legislature could potentially draft a new law if they wanted to, but instead, currently, they'll just go back to the 6-month law. So petition circulators and who are collecting signatures out on the streets prior to Election Day will have 6 months to do so backwards from Election Day. So 6 months before Election Day, they'll be able to submit their signatures.
And then is there any updates that you have to this story today?
Not today. I did add a statement from John Hanson, who was the prime sponsor of the original bill that was passed by both the Senate and the governor. He essentially said that he disagreed with the judge's ruling, saying that the judge got it wrong. So that is all available in my article online.
Excellent. And then is there anything else that you'd like viewers to know about this story that you created?
I think it's paying attention to how much time these people on the streets have to submit their signatures and paying attention to what the legislature is trying to do is important because it keeps you informed. And it's good to know the status of these initiated measures.
And you're switching gears tonight, Marissa, with a different story. What do you have coming on to KELOLAND News tonight? Yeah,
I checked in with the city about a new donation at Jacobson Plaza that will allow people who go visit the park to rent skates.
Excellent. Marissa, thank you so much for joining me here at the Digital Desk. And everyone stick around because up next, we're looking at a ribbon project that is helping spread suicide prevention and awareness. Stay with us. We have another digital reporter joining us next after the break. And welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. During September, police vehicles will be decked out with magnetic ribbons that say 988. And it's all a part of an initiative for suicide prevention. Our digital reporter, Gracie Terrell, joins me now at the Digital Desk to talk about this story that she created. Because, Gracie, who's teaming up for this ribbon project?
Yeah, so it's a partnership between the Helpline Center and their Sioux Falls Suicide Prevention Task Force and then the Sioux Falls Police Department. So those kind of 2-3 entities are making this happen.
I love it because I've seen other counties and police squads do this before where they have ribbons or something associated with suicide prevention on their cars. I'm trying to think of the last time I saw Sioux Falls do this. So what did you hear from Sioux Falls Police? Why do they want to join this ribbon project?
Sure, yeah. This is the first year that they're doing these specific ribbons with the Helpline Center. But yes, there have been, projects in the past. But when I was speaking with the police, they were, they say that they are around, suicide, people who call in to the police because they're having a mental health crisis. So they are, one of those, first maybe people that you encounter if you're, in a really bad crisis like that. So they wanted to get involved to, those police cars are driving around town. So if you see that ribbon and see that number, then you are reminded that there's something that you can do and call in people that can help. And the police can also help you get connected with those different resources if you call them instead of calling that 988 number. So they just, they've been around it, they've been exposed to it, and are there to be able to help kind of find different ways to help someone out of that crisis.
Yeah, that's a really unique perspective going into this initiative. And when callers do dial 988, what did the Helpline Center tell you happens next?
Yeah, so if you can call, text, or chat that 988. That's a national hotline number, but you'll be directed to someone in the South Dakota area. And if you call in, they will, kind of talk with you, give you resources, help you. They'll also, call you back the next day or, do a follow-up check, get you in line with some, counselors and help, past that mental health crisis that you were experiencing in that moment. When you needed 988.
Yeah, and this isn't the only thing that's happening with this ribbon project, right? The Helpline Center is planning on hosting some events. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, so they've got a couple of things. Later in the month, they've got their Chalk the Walk event, so different businesses and communities can write some inspiring messages on the sidewalks. The last one they did, I noticed them on the bike trail, and it was really nice to see a bunch of, you are loved, you are heard, different inspiring messages. So that will be on the 17th or 18th. So coming up here in the next few weeks. And then they've also got their Project 437 run, which is a run across the state of South Dakota, starting in the Spearfish area. And it's a team of 12 runners. One of them is our KELOLAND's Dan Centella, and they will run across the state raising money and awareness for suicide prevention, and that is coming up at the end of September.
Well, I love the Kelo representation, and I love that all of these events and this ribbon project, too, is kind of like a visual reminder for everybody that there is help, there is ways to be seen. And this is just really great. Is there anything else that you'd like viewers to know about this story or this type of awareness, Gracie?
I think one of the interesting, points of data that the Helpline Center gave me was that in 2024 they responded to 13,000 contacts, so calls, texts, or chats. So that number is rising as more people are aware of that 988 number. So they're there to help out, and it's seeing more use, which is a good thing if they're able to get connected with those right resources.
Gracie, thank you for sharing this hope and awareness right here at the Digital Desk with us. And viewers, stick around. We're going to wrap things up after the break. Well, that's all the time that we have for Inside the Newsroom today. Our reporters are extremely busy. Basically, the newsroom is pretty empty right now. If I had a camera to show you how empty it is, you'd be astonished because everybody is out getting stories right now that you can see for our evening newscast and online at KELOLAND.com. As for the rest of my evening, I've been keeping an eye on the Powerball and all the drawings and just how much that jackpot is going to be. I know there's another, what do they call it? A calling tonight, whatever they're going to call the numbers. I've only participated in lotteries like once, and I think it was the Powerball last year. And so now with the jackpot at least being like 1.3 billion right now after tonight's drawing, I might need to buy a ticket. I'm not sure. This is the 5th largest in the game's history, by the way, having that 1.3 billion jackpot. So that might be enough for me to maybe buy a ticket. I know we have a KELOLAND pot starting right now to see if we can divvy it, which is really fun. And the cash value is almost $600 million, and that's according to CBS News. So I might have to participate in a little game tonight. It might be the move. But if you're looking for things to do tonight after you watch Inside the Newsroom, of course, you should watch our other programs on KELOLAND Plus. We have Whether or Not that usually airs after Inside the Newsroom at 1:30 Mondays through Fridays. And of course, this is with our favorite meteorologists, Scott Munt and Brian Karstens, as they talk about everything weather-related or not. Actually, they haven't really had a lot of or not segments because everything has just been so busy with active weather. I mean, this summer they had severe weather, and then going into now, I think they'll start incorporating a lot more or not sections. So if you want to see what exactly they're going to talk about, you should go watch that, especially if you watch our forecast during the newscast and you're always wondering like, can they just explain this a little bit more? Or, hey, can they just focus on Watertown? They want to hear that feedback, and they have a little crawl just like you see here on my screen that shows where you can submit questions or photos if you have some storm-related photos to show, or just anything weather-related. We love a good sunset pic, right? Or sunrise. Those are always good too, but I like the sunsets more. So that's Whether or Not. That airs Mondays through Fridays at 1:30, only here on KELOLAND Plus. And then at 3:30, you can watch Sports Zone All Access. Now, if you're familiar with Sports Zone, you know that you get an in-depth look at sports coverage from our sports team. But Sports Zone All Access just really takes that further because it's a 30-minute show only here on KELOLAND Plus. And it's really fun to see because now that Kelsey has joined the team, you get a really good look at her experiences coming in and learning more about KELOLAND area sports. Hearing from Ian is just always fun, and Grant, of course. But the whole team just has really inspiring and unique perspectives about what they're going to be covering, what they expect throughout the games, and just what makes KELOLAND local sports so special. That's why that one's really fun to watch, especially with football season here. That's one you can't really miss. We've been streaming some football games on KELOLAND Plus too. Last week, we just streamed our first one when it was Watertown hosting at their new stadium, I believe, which was really, really cool. But yeah, that's Sports Zone All Access. That airs at 3:30 Monday through Fridays. Isn't this cool? We have 3 daily shows that you can watch on KELOLAND Plus. Inside the Newsroom, Whether or Not, and Sports Zone All Access. That is just here on KELOLAND Plus. So thank you all for watching. And this really wraps up Inside the Newsroom for today. So until tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we'll see you next time. And until then, have a great day, everyone.